Welcome to Beacon of Creation, a weekly podcast on game design through the lens of Magic the Gathering. I'm Tim.
I'm Juliet.
We got the lens of Magic the Gathering, but this week I think we're going to go a little bit afield there. We're going to be talking about a kind of a variety of kind of smaller possible game projects you could use, or different sorts of frameworks, tools, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main things that people find appealing about Magic design is that it's like one of the games that you can design for with the least amount of like friction in the beginning. If you just want to say, hey, play with these custom cards instead of these regular cards, the rules are already the same.
Mm-hmm.
You had the idea of maybe exploring some other things that have that same sort of feel to it. Something small that you can bite off that you can still feel successful and have some fun doing.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people's first custom cards, their first Magic design is, oh, this character I like. But in Magic, I think we might see even more in like all of my commander deck are canon Magic cards, but I have a custom commander as sort of kind of like entry space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a Tim and Julia episode, which oftentimes, but not always, means a like design challenge review.
Yeah.
And I think our design challenges are also a great opportunity for people to say, I'm going to design one card.
Yeah.
I can bite off this amount of game design, and sometimes like fulfilling the challenge is like a mini game that they're playing, but you're also creating a game piece that then can be played. Most custom Magic cards are lyric games to an extent, in that you are playing the game of it in your head more than like, I'm actually going to play this card against somebody right now today in a real life game. I would draw a big comparison then to say that our like monthly design challenges that we do are a kind of specific form of game jam.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Game jams are opportunities to design frequently a smaller game based on some sort of prompt, based on some sort of idea. And there's typically a time, hey, this is the window for the next month, or for this weekend, or for these 2 days that we're all together. Here's the game jam. At the end, you're going to have something, and you're going to limit the scope of it so that you can get it done. Right now, one of the playtest servers that I spend a lot of time in over at Session Zero, Playtest Zero, has the parry, the parry everything game jam that's just begun, where the idea is design a game where one of the major mechanics is, you can think of like parrying, like parry windows in like Souls games and in action RPGs, but like, what if we really looked at that in a broader context? What if we looked at that in tabletop RPGs? What if we really designed things around parrying? Okay, great. You got this little hook of an idea. A lot of people got into tabletop role-playing game designing from what's thought of as the like sad mecha jam or emotional mecha jam, which was talk about mechs, talk about like giant robots that people, you know, pilot, and emotions. And these two ideas together, that looking at these things through that lens, lets a lot of people make their first game. And once you've made your first game, that's when you can really start to look at the other things. Once you've designed your first card, once you've like talked to people and shown card and gotten feedback and those things, that's when like your wheels really start to turn as a game designer. And so that, I think that's a really valuable role for like small challenges and small game jams and small opportunities for design, because it gets you from the start point to the finish point in a short enough distance that you can actually get to the finish point.
Mm-hmm. You have your like Mousewife Games itch.io page, which is like a mixture of sort of playbooks and then actual little games.
Mm-hmm.
Which came first there, or how did you get started in that, or what actually encouraged you to make the jump?
So this is why I bring up the sad mecha jam, the emotional mecha jam.
Because that
was my starting off point. Because the idea, okay, make a game or a game piece, or something about this idea that isn't just I shoot lasers at you, I shoot missiles at you, pew 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 pew, but tying into these ideas. There was a 200-word RPG challenge that I was like, great, I can make something about this. It's about being out in space and it being you and your and your mech. It didn't win, but it was like a finalist for one of those things, because my idea was like the Giving Tree, but it's you out in the depths of space with your like robot who is like slowly giving more and more of its body for you to survive. The thing that really started me off like, oh, I'm going to make an itch.io page, I'm going to start making things, was okay, so in James Joyce's Ulysses,
all right,
episode 9, which is the specific part of James Joyce's Ulysses that I have spent over a decade of my life studying at this point, there's a discussion of the first president of Ireland, who was a poet and a critic of poetry, is Douglas Hyde's Love Songs of Connacht, which bound thee forth my booklet quick to greet the callous public. Writ, I ween 'twas not my wish in lean, unlovely English, which doesn't actually come from Hyde's Love Songs of Connacht, but from Hyde's History of Gaelic Poetry. It's a misattribution. And so I'd gone really deep down this rabbit hole of just studying Gaelic poetry through the lens of like a post-English sort of idea of like Irish independence and everything, and their point of view on their own history of Gaelic poetry and what it would mean to bring back Gaelic poetic forms, with the realization that everybody speaks English because it is like the imperial tongue. And so I used one of those Gaelic poetic forms as a like mech construction game.
Wow.
Where I give 2 lines of poetry and then you give 2 lines of poetry that like fit together to form this like poetic form. And those 4 lines together describe what the mech is.
Oh.
Which is that's not for everybody, but that was my ability to take, hey, here's this thing that I'm passionate about that most people don't know anything about and doesn't have anything to do with subject media or tabletop role-playing games or video games or anything necessarily. And here's an opportunity for me to make something really small. That game is either 2 or 3 pages total. I made it in Google Slides because you could just like export PDF. I didn't have any software at the time. This was my export. This was my thing. And from there, I started making probably my best work, which is playbooks based on Masks: A New Generation, Blades in the Dark, games like this, having these playbooks that fit into the game and add something new to it. That's kind of my specialty, I think, is making playbooks that ask questions about what the rest of the characters have always been doing. For a Blades in the Dark playbook jam, I made The Prince, which is a Blades in the Dark playbook where you...
A playbook is sort of an adventure for the game system. What is a playbook?
A playbook is like a character class.
Yeah.
You can pick particular moves on it. You can kind of arrange your stats, but it gives you some... it's a bucket that holds things about your character and that describes an arc that your character is on. The Prince is in many ways based on the song Common People. It's the idea of everybody else is fighting this desperate battle in these alleyways and in the muck to survive and like stealing from each other and like gang warfare. And you are a rich person who is choosing to live that life, but can leave it at any time. And how much that like puts in relief the kind of life that everybody else is living there.
So you would take this into Blades in the Dark as sort of faction city fighting, like game system, game setting.
It's like Dishonored, basically, but you're not the person with superpowers. You're the other people.
Yeah, it kind of like steampunky or whatever you want to call that. So you're creating a playbook here as sort of saying like, hey, I'm sort of creating my own character, but I'm not just creating a character, I'm creating like a group of options for a character that I kind of like, but then also maybe other people would like to pick up. It's not too different from Magic. Designing your own Magic cards. I like this card, but I imagine that other people would like playing these cards or this mechanic.
It's great when it can be kind of a critical look at the original text. that it can be bringing something new to it. So,
Yeah.
for instance, if I'm going to be doing a Ravnica set, it's going to be, okay, what can we do with the original material? What can we do? What are we actually asking about the nature of multicolor? What are we actually talking about when we talk about Ravnica as a city set? You know, like we can kind of tie in these critical ideas. But I'm someone who finds critical analysis particularly interesting. It sounds like you might also be trying out some game design in the month of January.
I have some time off coming up, and I've been kind of searching around to figure out what I want to work on. I'd kind of like to make a video game of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made I used to do like Warcraft maps and stuff like that, and I've obviously played a lot of
Mm-hmm.
D&D and a lot of Magic, but I haven't really made a video game in a long time outside of college or something. You had brought up GB Studio, GB short for Game Boy, the old handheld from Nintendo. GB Studio is sort of this new, actually not that new, but this graphical interface built to export to playable Game Boy games, but also you can export it to the web. So it's pretty easy to distribute. You don't have to worry about getting binaries around.
You can play it in browser, which is a really great thing. So people don't have to download the game. Whenever any game design tool lets people play the game without needing to download it.
Yeah.
So, if you want to make a really, really basic visual kind of top-down video game, you can try something like Bitsy, which is an engine so simple you can literally have the whole game in a text file. I've done a lot of work with Bitsy 3D, which is just kind of a way to make a visual novel, but you're walking around. RenPy, which is short for Python, is a really easy way to make your own more traditional visual novel.
Yeah.
And you don't really have to know a lot of Python to be if you know Python, you can make it. It's extremely easy. If you know just enough of stuff, it's pretty easy to start digging into the works. And recently, RenPy is now also able to be played through browsers, which is such a big
cool.
help. And so I think that's been a big improvement in GB Studio, both in terms of how the tutorial tools, how the kind of sample games that you can play around with make it much easier to start making something that's totally playable. And yeah, it has that kind of pale green and dark green color scheme.
Love that.
Of original Game Boy.
One thing that's held me back before, and why I usually end up making something for another game like Warcraft or whatever, is the art asset part. Something like RenPy, if I was more on the art side and just want to know a little programming, that would be good. But I'm all the way on the other end. I'm a professional programmer. I find it hard to work on a programming project for a long time outside of work because it's what I do all day. But I kind of want something that is going to just be primitive graphically, but good enough that I don't feel too bad about it. And I feel like GB Studio is maybe the parameters to shoot for, 3-color games or whatever you want to call that.
If people want to start with the really basic-ist graphics, Bitsy's also great for that because everything is literally 8 bits and just 2 colors. GB Studio, you can make some pretty impressive sprites out of just those basic colors because you can put a lot of pixels together. With Bitsy, it's okay, how advanced of a figure can you do in an 8x8 pixel square? And people can do really interesting things with that, but because it is limiting in that way, it gets you again from start to finish. Listen, this is as good of a little bird figure as I'm going to make, so that's going to be what a bird looks like for this game, and kind of starting from there.
Have you ever worked with assets and stuff like that, like asset packs?
I'm familiar with them. I will say one piece of advice that is certainly not universal, but can come in handy for people who want to start playing around in space is marry an artist.
LOL.
Again, not necessarily the most universal things.
I think I'm the artist of the two, so that's bad news.
But for instance, in RPG Maker, I would struggle all day if I needed to draw all of the assets. I would spend 20 hours in 1 week making dirt and tree and then give up because like I've been spending too much time
Yeah,
on something.
exactly. Yeah.
And so what I have used in the past and what I am elbow deep in using right now is a thing called Pokemon Essentials.
Mm.
It's not every sprite that's ever existed in Pokemon, but it's a pretty good starting point.
Mm.
And it also incorporates already the, like, more or less the Pokemon battle engine.
Oh, okay.
So 2 years ago, I made a game. A lot of my January game design is for a thing called Secret Sample, which is
Oh,
a
yeah.
fan work
Yep.
exchange in the Friends of the Table fandom.
Friends of the Table is like actual play podcast that's been going on
Mhm.
for a long time. They do like a ton of world building up front every season. And then I think that really pays off over the course of seasons because then all the fans really get into that world and it spawns a lot of fan work as well.
Yeah. They had an arc that is honestly one of the best things ever done in actual play and maybe in podcasting called America's Playground. I had made a game for that using RPG Maker, using Pokemon Essentials to make a Pokemon game that's effectively, if you imagine, the equivalent of like one town with two gyms.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
you're going back and forth, you've got some wild areas, you're going, and you're basically just doing the plot of this little podcast arc as a story.
Oh, okay.
Your partner Pokemon in this one is a Keldeo.
Don't know that one.
It's a little legendary water horse.
Okay.
There's a important horse who shows up in this
All
French
right.
at the Table arc, and I was like, perfect, one for one. The horse's name is Princeton, and so I like rewrote the way you would have like Pokemon. It's like Princeton,
Oh, hell yeah.
and told a like funny story. I was able to use a lot of the characters from the arc and try to like match them with Pokemon sprites. I was
Yeah.
able
Smart.
to use some of the this is an actual play podcast with very good music because one of the one of the players in it is a
Oh, yeah. Is that
composer. Yeah,
Jack
Jack
something, right?
DeKeat at Not Quite Real and notquitereal.bandcamp.com.
Yeah.
And so I was able to use all this great Bluff City music and make a Pokemon game. It's 1899. Kids are on their last day of summer vacation. They're all working at this boardwalk in like a fictional version of Atlantic City. And you go around to help get your friends off of work so that you can do this heist. So you go and you battle their like dads or the like customers that they're dealing with in Pokemon battles so that they can leave, and then you go do this heist, and then ta-da, it's fun.
Hmm.
I spent way too much time on this project. I spent over 100. My budget was 100 hours, which is a lot for
Yeah.
a project. Now, a few years later, with some more advanced tools that are coming out, and with more time to kind of let these things like stew in different ideas, I've now ported the original game to the new Pokemon Essentials engine, which the combat
Mm.
runs much more quickly, and there's a lot of fun different things. And people make plugins, and you've got to figure out, okay, will this plugin
Oh,
work? For
crazy.
instance,
Whoa.
now I've been working on a Safari Zone and different ways to like tweak like the idea of a Safari Zone, use the core mechanics of a Safari Zone to do like interesting things. You know, that was a summer vacation game. This is going to be like as part of the same game, but like the winter vacation
Ah,
idea.
the
And
same kind of
I,
setting and characters, or
yeah, same setting, same characters. It's going to shift which one of the kids is like the player character some, but I've already put like 40 hours into this since Christmas.
hell yeah. What?
The
So
Mhm,
breakdown wise, if people are thinking of like 40
mhm.
hours, is this 40 hours like how much of it is sort of like writing and brainstorming? How much of it is how does that break down? What is it? How are you spending that time?
Yeah, so a lot of time for when you're doing a video game, you will spend a lot of your time playtesting. You will
Hmm.
put a thing together and then play the game and try to figure out, okay, and then I ran into this wall, or oh, this doesn't look right, this doesn't line up right, etc., etc.
When I hit
In my
right, I actually face left. Whoops.
Or when I finish this battle, it just starts again because
Oh,
I didn't I
yeah.
didn't finish the loop. Or the game just totally freezes whenever you talk to this person, then they leave because you froze the game, but that character never actually left the scene. Video
Hmm.
games are complicated. I would not recommend starting with RPG Maker as your first one,
Yeah.
but I really would start with a as simple a game as possible. If I hadn't made multiple games over the course of successive Januaries, if I hadn't made like multiple more like walk around visual novels,
Hmm.
I would have been in over my head. And maybe I was a little bit already, but a lot of that time is testing, is learning a scripting language, whatever
Hmm.
that scripting language is going to be. But for
Hmm.
Pokemon, it's also figuring out the balance, making sure the sprites work out. My first time around, I did as much as possible to not do any new like spriting or
Yeah.
re-spriting as it's called.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
time around, I'm breaking that rule and I'm like, no, I am I am re-spriting a bunch of stuff, and the shift in engine and the re-spriting has been a lot of that work, and making ice sliding puzzles. It turns out that making
Oh,
puzzles takes a lot of time because you have to playtest tiny changes and then, oh, this is really
yeah.
elegant. And then as soon as I add a second part to this puzzle, ooh, it broke the first part, and you're playtesting a lot of those things.
Yeah. You can get
But
soft locked where you can't progress
mhm,
the puzzle because of some state. Yeah.
I would recommend if you're making your first game, make the equivalent of what we would call like a walking simulator. Your character goes
Hmm.
around, talks to different people or different things, gets some feedback from the environment, and talks to the right person or moves the right
Hmm.
thing or hands something to somebody, and then ta-da, you can make lots of different stories out of just those elements, which is one reason why something like Bitsy can still make incredible games even with very basic graphics and no physics to speak of, because
Hmm.
you can do a lot with just, I walk up to a character and they say something. I walk up to a place and I get a line of dialogue from my character. Trying to get a finished product is the most important thing.
Hmm.
You get way more out of finishing something that is smaller than you wanted it to than you get out of leaving something big unfinished.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think, this also ties into things in card design
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where,
And if you're looking for feedback on things, it's actually harder to give feedback on like whole sets. Like this is something
mhm,
that, people have swung by in the Discord or people that I've known or whatever have a whole thing and they want feedback on the whole thing. Or a cube, I think is another common one. And it's hard to give like holistic feedback on a cube because it takes, you have to, it takes like a half an hour to like even kind of fully understand all the pieces that are in there. A smaller project is, a little easier to get feedback on, a little easier to reflect on.
a few times over the years, folks in the Discord, including me, have worked on very small games for there's a company called Button Shy that they produce 18 card games.
Oh
They're
yeah,
like
yeah.
little wallet games. It's a card game or a mini board game that doesn't require you to fit a board game box into your luggage. So you can just
Hmm.
have this like in your suitcase. You can just have this in your backpack or whatever and pull out and play an 18 card game.
Hmm.
And it's much easier to kind of like play in that space, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. And so having some of these extra restrictions can make it easier to build your first board game. To go from, hey, I've made some magic cards to, okay, what if I shifted this to another space? Recently, I've
Uh,
been working a lot on like social deduction games and how, if you're playing Werewolf or Mafia, back in the day, we would just use playing cards. And then you eventually get like Ultimate One Night Werewolf, and we get these other cards, and trying to figure out what what are the smallest amount of those elements that we can really add mechanical depth to.
yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I'm sort of searching for is what the right set of restrictions is for me. I think
Mhm.
I don't know that I would be fully satisfied making like a walk around and talk to people kind of game.
Mhm.
think I need something else going on, and I have to sort of pick uh, what the right mixture is, I guess. That is
And
still achievable without a huge investment.
if you go into Game Boy Studio, you could add, okay, and it's a platformer,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
you're jumping back and forth.
yeah.
If if I needed to make a complete Pokemon game this week, I'd be like, great, there's no fights. It's just ice puzzles. Because I've been spending a lot of
Hmm.
time on ice puzzles lately. And so, like,
Hmm.
great, I have some of these ideas. That part of my brain has been like activated. And having finished making one of those, I now have a lot of ideas about what it takes to finish one of those, what the
Mm.
work is
Yeah,
involved in those things. And that I think is a reason to make a walking simulator, even if you aren't sharing it with other people, a reason to make
yeah,
whatever the smallest game you possibly can, because you're kind of like laying that mental foundation. You're tamping down that soft earth
yeah.
in
It's
order
always the hard
to.
part, isn't it? Yeah,
Mhm,
just doing a bad thing first, so you can do a cool thing later. Not bad. I'm not judging, but uh, it's something that you're more modest than you're really happy with first, and then later you can
mhm. One
put.
reason why I bring up all of these different tools and everything so often is
Yeah.
because as the tools have become more advanced, it's easier to make a one weekend project that satisfies that little itch in the back of your head that says, well, the thing I make has to be great
Yeah, I
in
think
order for it to go out there.
that's definitely like I'm getting part of the way there just going for like a GB studio or something rather than trying
Hmm.
to use a more generic engine or even like write a basic thing without an engine. Saying like, hey, I'm gonna exist within the restrictions of what GB Studio is good at, rather than trying to be unchained, I guess.
Hmm. A engine that I would really suggest literally everyone in our audience try out is something called Downpour
Yeah.
that came out, I was to say earlier this year, but wait, no, we're in
Oh,
we were in
rip,
2025.
rip.
It is, you can make a game using your phone.
Hmm. This is almost
Down
like
mhm,
a
mhm.
it's a 40 years later hypercard. This is
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, HyperCard
Of course,
Studio."
hypercard. Like, yeah.
Yeah. If folks are really interested in HyperCard style games, there is a program called Decker that
Okay.
I have friends who deeply, deeply love it. I wish if I had time, if I had the time and energy and didn't have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Decker can do some really interesting things, especially if you want to play in that like grayscale ish, sort of like early
Oh, okay. I'm
Macintosh.
looking at this now. This is actually old Mac looking. So
Mhm,
hypercard is sort of like PowerPoint, but you can like click on areas of the screen to go to different places. You can think of a game like Myst as being sort of like
mhm.
hypercard in the background, where it's just like showing you an area, you click on things, and then a part of a puzzle moves. You click on a thing, a part of it. You don't walk around like it's just showing you images, and then those images can change depending.
So Decker is an example of keep the aesthetics at their like super minimal,
Yeah.
but have a pretty impressive engine in the background if you want to be using that kind of
Hmm.
hypercard, like that sort of simple interface to do particularly interesting things, to have like animations going on, to have things like that. Downpour is on the other side. The engine is as hyper simple as possible, but the aesthetic you can have, the sky's the limit.
Hmm.
And this is one reason why I think I would challenge our audience to do something interesting with it is, hey, if you have MSE, if you have the Magic Set Editor, I mean, speaking of the Magic Set Editor, that's another great tool that makes it much
Yeah.
easier for me to make a card or a bunch of cards and then share it with somebody. But if you can just make a few Magic card designs or change the text in a few Magic card images, you can put those images together and make a downpour game. You
Hmm.
can have a thing where like, okay, I'm going to tap the power, and as I tap the power it goes up, and then I'm going to change the name to this, and then I'm going to change the color to this, and you go back and forth between different things. You can do this very simply with no video game design experience and make, I don't know, what sort of story do you want to make with it?
Downpour. Yeah,
Mhm,
so you're kind of cropping images, putting text areas that are clickable that can transition to other things. It's on
mhm.
more phone size, so if you're looking to do something on your phone more so than on a computer.
Back when we had co-host as the best social media, you could have a downpour game in a co-host post, which was very
Oh,
fun,
okay.
but
So like exports to like something
mhm,
somewhere?
yeah.
Okay.
There's a fun downpour game that's just you're clicking on a color, you're tapping, you typically with your like thumb or your index finger or your mouse on a color, and then okay, here's 3 names. What is the actual name for this color in like painting swatches?
Oh.
Is this lilac veranda? Is
Hmm.
this autumn grove midnight? Is this twilight of the sky? Like, okay, I'm gonna be, and then you tap the one and it either tells you, actually, no, it's this, or that name is this color. There's a, I don't say a famous downpour game, but like a game that
Mm.
really makes you go, okay, this is interesting. That's just somebody making a cup of tea. And so you can tap on the thing and be like, I'm going to add sugar. And it goes to a sugar in the cup.
Hmm.
The idea when you first learn about stop motion animation, and then you learn, oh, that's actually like takes just a mind numbing amount of time.
Oh yeah.
Imagine if you were like a mist game, like anything, you're just taking these slides together and then
Yeah.
attaching them based on the ability to like click or tap on, it could be 2 choices, could be 20 choices if you can fit them all on the screen. That you can have these different interactions leading you back and forth. And again, because it's simple, it can be quick. And because it's quick, you can be done with it. And then you can go, wait, I can improve this with my next one. I could be done with a downpour game in under 2 hours. Like
Hmm.
that is a really great place to start.
Like a trivia quiz kind of thing you could do pretty
Mhm,
easily. But with like kind
mhm.
of a nice interface or like a cool interface, I guess, because you're picking the images, you're kind of collaging it.
Which one of these entirely inscrutable text boxes is the actual original one for, Ice Cauldron or
Yeah.
Chains of
I was
Mephistopheles?
I was thinking of something like that. What if you showed a magic card and then you had to tap on the part that was wrong? That was not part of the real card.
Mhm. And the
uh,
idea that like, "Oh, that's fun," but I wouldn't wanna write, like, a whole program to do that.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you wanted to, if we wanted to do, like, a social media push, we could spend, like, a whole weekend making a bunch of those and just keep pushing those out to social media, like,
Yeah.
every other day, here's another, like, "Oh, and here which part of the card is," like, there's these opportunities here, and once you're doing that, then you start thinking, "Ooh, and now on this one, now we got a
Yeah.
twist."
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm kind of convinced on that one. I would say that GB Studio and this Downpour are my top two currently in terms of what I'm leaning
Yeah.
towards. I kind of wanted to get a little glimpse of, I don't know if maybe this is just putting
Mhm.
you on the spot, but I want to get a little glimpse of just some kind of ordinary things you worked on with either the Princeton or from your new game. Something that's to get people kind of in the mindset of like, what are the normal things you're doing as part of that? You have to, rather than speaking in general terms, what are a couple specifics to help people like really start to visualize what it's like? I don't know. When you know what it takes to do something, it's a lot less intimidating than when you don't know.
Sure. For instance, I'm gonna be talking a lot about ice puzzles because, again, I've been
Oh hell yeah!
working a lot with
Yep.
ice puzzles, and so part of that is figuring out what what does it take for the game engine to know that when you walk on a tile, it should just keep taking you going across until you run into something solid? And what does it take for the game engine to know
Yeah.
where something solid is?
Hmm.
And thankfully, with Pokemon Essentials, those 2 things are relatively easy. I can
Mm.
set the terrain tags for the ice to 12, or I can use an environment where the ice is already has that tag, and then
Mm.
basically draw. You've got 3 layers more or less, so I'll draw ice on one of those layers, and then I'll draw physical objects on some of those other layers. And so then I will start, okay, here's my entrance and here's the exit. if I go left from the entrance, I'm going to run into this wall. Okay, and then I can go up or down from that left. If I go forward, I can go left or right from the thing I run into. And so you start placing blocks down, and then you run the game, and then you bump into the thing, and you say, ooh, I think I'll place a block here. And then you exit out, you place 2 blocks. You go in and you run a game. It's like, oh, I need to move this one. You exit out, you move the block around, you run it again, and you keep working on those different things. And eventually you go, oh, at this part, we're sliding behind a kind of tower of ice. I'm going to put an item back there. So you run into something that you can't see, and you can either just turn around and go back, or if you hit the like action button, if you hit A, it's space bar on the computer, but like it's the equivalent of A in a Pokemon game.
Yeah.
You'll go, da, 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 here's an item. And so I'll go in and I'll say, here's the Pokeball. Here is the item script. It's going to give you that item into your inventory. So I call the script for item, and then I just define the name of the item because all of the items are defined in a different text file. And then I just write in a little text because RPG Maker has a lot of dialogue stuff built in. And so I can just put text. Here's what the text should look like, and here's what it says. You got a Great Ball. You got a Draco plate. You got a whatever the item. And so then I go in, I run into the thing, I hit A, and then I say, hey, great, it's here. If I want to put a bunch of those, I can copy that event so I don't have to rewrite it each time. I haven't made a new item in a long time because I just go back to one of the other maps, grab that event, copy it, and then paste it into a new map and change the parameters. So I change it to here's a different item, here's a different text, and just go from there. Because once you start making something, I haven't made a new trainer in a long time because I just copy a trainer, I change what they look like, I change what they say, I change their Pokemon, and like work from there.
The dialogue's got to be pretty short and quick in these. Has that been a fun thing, or does that feel more like a burden to have to get it down to 10 words or whatever?
I'm a verbose person by nature. A thing that listeners might know, even from this episode alone. I think I probably have
there you go.
Is 75% of the timeshare. But I had to figure out. So you got the 1 line and then you got 2. Once you got something like 3 lines, then people have to let the whole thing scroll and then hit A and then go to the 3rd thing, which I didn't really think was going to be an issue until I watched and listened to the friends at the table play my game on stream and realized that they finished their sentence and then scrolled to the next line and then would say that as though it's a new sentence. So I'm like, okay, yeah, everything's got to be short and sweet. It's got to fit all on screen at the same time, which means there isn't going to be a lot of like depth. The game has to be in the gameplay rather than in the dialogue. If there was voiceover, I could do all sorts of things, but I'm not doing a game with voiceover because that would take a lot of extra time and energy.
So the lines have to be a little quippier maybe, or?
Yeah. You start with whatever your original idea is, and then you cut, and then you cut, and then you cut, and then you walk away and do something else for a little bit, and you come back, and then you're able to cut it down to length because you've disconnected from whatever the original idea, and you're just looking at what's actually there. Because people are only going to see what is in the game, or what is like the illusion, the veneer of in the game. I think a lot of us have seen, it's Fallout 3 or New Vegas or one of those, where when you're in a train, it's just like a hat that goes on top of the character and everything. It's like, great. People are going to see that. They're not going to see what's outside of the game. They're not going to see the things that got cut or that are missing.
Yeah.
They're going to see the thing that is there. And that is another thing that it's really hard to mentally wrap your head around. Like, I mean, we can conceive of and understand the idea, but once you're creating a finished game, even a small one, and handing it to people, again, you're like tamping down that foundation so that your brain knows, okay, and here's what I need to include in the next one, and here's what I can cut, even though I didn't really want to cut it, or here's another way we can include that in the mechanics. Oh, I want this extra line of dialogue. I will have it if you go back and talk to that person a second time.
There you
So
go.
it is involved in there, but it's just a second switch, and then they'll loop that dialogue. And then because there's a lot of second time you talk to people dialogue, there's an old lady who you can talk to near the beginning of the game, and she's one of the first NPCs you see. You don't have to talk to her. She's not plot important. But if you do talk to her, she's like, "Oh, thanks for taking your time to talk to a kind old lady. You're such a charming young man." People have things to say if you talk to them twice.
Yeah.
And like that little thing means if you're somebody who just wants to hang out and go around and talk to everybody, then you know, ooh, I should make sure I talk to everyone twice because some of them will have plot important or secrets or different things that they're only going to reveal the second time you talk to them.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if you miss that, you can technically beat the game if you just go enough places.
Do you have a lot of like I don't know what you'd call them in Pokemon, but like quest flags, like, hey, you've already beaten this gym, so now people say different things when you talk to them.
Mhm. In RPG Maker in particular, you've got both switches and variables.
Yeah.
Switches work like switches are just a variable that has like an on and off state.
Yeah.
And anybody who you're talking to, which includes like items, uh signposts, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
anything that is going to make a script happen when you walk up to it and hit A, including trainers, including NPCs, things like that. They all have a built-in switch called a self switch. And so if, for instance, a trainer, you just want to have you fight them the first time and then they turn into something else, just use a self switch so that after you fought them, self switch turns on, and then there's a second version of their event tucked into their event that says, "Hey, if my self switch is on, I don't try to challenge you to a fight every time."
I just say, "That
For
was great.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
You beat me.
I
That
did
was
my best.
incredible."
I have no regrets. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or wow, you should really go talk to your friends back at the Pokemon Center. You know, like they
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes you put signposts in there. For items, once you've grabbed the item, it self switches on. And when the self switches on, the item just is invisible and isn't interactable. It's like it's just
Huh.
hidden from the world. It's tucked away.
Oh, it's still
And
sort of
so
in the world, but it's just
mhm.
not visible. That's a funny way to think of it. Huh.
And you can't interact with it. So it's like it is for the player non-existent, and it
Yeah.
is for the program just like an inert event, I
Yeah. Yeah.
suppose. And then you've got variables which you can do all sorts of stuff with. I mean, they're variables. They work that you can either tick them
Yeah.
up or add them down
How
or
many
go
battles you've won. Yeah.
Mhm. Figuring out that language, figuring out when do I want to use switches, when do I want to use variables, what variables can I kind of make all the same thing that just slowly ticks up, and because for every single event, I don't want to add a global variable
Yeah.
because then my list of global variables becomes so long. Oh, did you pick up that potion early in the game? Well, that potion has its own variable, and so anytime I need to go through to find a variable, I've got to scroll through this
Yeah.
list of no. That is a really useful thing about RPG Maker. Game Boy Studio is going to have their own setup for variables. It's going to be in its
Yeah.
own system. If you are, you know, using something like Godot, you're going to be figuring out its own variable system. If you're using Python in like RenPy to make a visual novel, the variables for making someone smile or making someone grumpy, they've built some of these things into the way the language is parsed to make it as easy as possible. If I had to can do any of the stuff I do in RPG Maker, it
Mm.
would be a nightmare. I'm thankful there's a graphic interface.
Yeah. Yeah. Not have to load and unload graphics from the disk or whatever.
Mhm.
Do you feel like did you set aside another 100 hours for your new ice world or whatever, your new winter vacation?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we will see. We will see. Work starts up again this week, and
Uh,
I spent a lot of the Christmas to New Year's time working on a lot of things. I've made a bunch of rooms, and now I have to make sure that those rooms can all actually
mm,
connect together to make a game that people understand why you're going from place to place. Pretty early on, I was like, great. I know what items you're going to be trying to collect. You need to collect at least 8 of them. There's 17. So if you don't want to do ice puzzles, you can go do these other things. If you don't want to do, you know what I mean? Like that there's this flexibility. I'm hoping I can get it over the finish line while also doing work and you know, all of the different podcasts and things that I have
Yeah.
obligations to and trying to make plans for 2025. But this is one reason to bite off a smaller thing. Anytime I
Yeah.
make a game, the people close to me say, you should do less.
Hmm.
And they're always right.
Would you have been you happy with Princeton at half size?
I mean, in many ways, Princeton was half size.
Oh, all right.
The game was broken when it came out. You literally couldn't finish the game. I had to go back in because, like, oh, I'd playtested this thing, but I'd skipped over in my debugging. And I've added some features over time. This coming back to it in some ways is me doing the second half of the game. This is me adding
Oh.
in like a game corner that you can go to, adding in more like responsive elements. But if I'd taken the original Princeton and cut it in half, I still think it would have been a good game. I still think people really would have enjoyed it. I could have cut out
Hmm.
the whole rumor mechanic. I could have cut out the beach as a second wild area. I could have cut out the heist even and just had it you go see your friends and help them get off from work so they can you go and you beat their dads in a Pokemon battle so they can go hang out with you instead of needing to work that day. And I think it would have been a totally fine game. I'm glad I made the thing I did, but in retrospect, half of the half that was released would have been totally fine. And it would have been better than if I'd gotten to where I'd gotten and didn't
Hmm.
release it.
And didn't finish it. Yeah. Planning to finish it is maybe the number one the thing you should figure out scope wise. Like this is something that you should finish. How big should it be? Well, how big a thing do you want to try to finish?
Mhm. We're each of us never going to be perfectly realistic about the end product of the game from where we start. But the
Yeah,
smaller of a
sure.
game you make, especially as you're starting out, the more realistic your assessment is going to be. If you can start out with a small thing and try to say, I'm going to make this and I'm going to get it done. And then your second pass is, having made a thing that's done, I'm going to make it as good as it can be while still being as small as the original one. Great. Okay, now I've made this thing and I've really figured out some new way to use these tools. I've actually learned a lot about these tools in the process. And now I can understand if I look at a tutorial, if I look at somebody's YouTube video, if I read
Hmm.
somebody's discussion, if I play somebody else's game, now that I've made those small things, I'm getting
Yeah.
way more out of this random GitHub post or Reddit
Yeah.
post or
Yeah. Yeah.
again playing somebody else's game. I'm going to get way more out of it because I've had again I'm going to keep talking about like tamping down soft earth, but like because we're starting to build that scaffolding.
Yeah.
So if you are wanting to make something great, if you are wanting to see, hey, here's this tutorial, I want to build the biggest thing based on it. Well, try making something small and you can end up using your tools even better.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I'm still kind of thinking through these options. I want to try one of these things, but I think in the kind of more so than Pokemon. Pokemon's fine with me, but I think in terms of Game Boy, it's got to be something closer to like a Link's Awakening or a
Mhm.
yeah, side scroller would be cool too. I want to swing a sword or at least use some sort of weapon. Maybe I don't know why.
There are people working on specifically Zelda style content or
Yeah,
Zelda style combat in GB Studio.
yeah.
I would start with a going back and forth and talking to people and like, you solved a little mystery or you because a lot of Zelda games is getting one item and then delivering it to somebody who gives you a different item that delivers
Hmm.
it to somebody, which, at least a lot of the Game Boy ones.
Get little quests. Yeah, maybe I'll be spending some time with that. Seems possible. That doesn't seem easy,
Yeah.
but it seems possible.
Well, I have total faith in you, and I
Thank
have total faith in you, the listener, as well.
Alrighty, yeah. Maybe that's a good time to wrap up. Before we get out of here, I want to tell everyone about our design challenge so you can participate with us. The one that Julia cooked up this time is called First of Its Kind, Design a Card Introducing a New Creature Type into Magic. We've opened the doors all the way open on this. You can kind of give us any card you want. But if you want a little guidance, a couple bonus points here to shoot for. Mark 1, make it an artifact. Mock 1, it has haste in its rules text. So we got a new creature. Maybe it's artifacty. Maybe it's a factory that spits out a new creature type. And then some sort of haste. Should it be red? Does it just need haste because it's like suspend?
Mhm. I really look forward to everything everyone figures out from there.
Yeah, that'll be due January 29th. So get that in. And that's it for our podcast for the week. Hop on the Discord. That's where everyone is. That's where you submit the design challenge. You can jump into popcorn. That's our big thing that's happening right now.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just fun to tune in every day to see what people are talking about. There's this discussion, just like there's just been hundreds of messages in the main Beaconeer chat lately because people are working through this couple new mechanics. Ignited is working on that and then getting a lot of feedback on it. So if you even just have an idea you want to workshop it a little bit, people love jumping in and giving their feedback, giving their ideas. Anything else we want to tell people about?
Yeah, so I will have technically the game I'm making is a secret, but I have the benefit of the audience for Beacon of Creation not overlapping with the audience that this game is technically a secret from until it releases.
Okay.
This is behind the scenes. This is game dev, game design
Yeah.
footage, but that'll come out later in the month of January. If you're listening to this the week it comes out, this Friday, January 10th, will be quote Showcase Zero, where some of the different designers who are involved in Playtest Zero typically put on a little presentation about a game that they made or like a game design lesson that they learned. Last year I did one on a game called Yuri Chess that I made.
Oh yeah.
That was one of the better 10-minute presentations I think I've ever given. I look forward to that this next coming Friday.
All right, cool. If you need to get in touch with us, Discord is probably the easiest way to do that, but I made my Blue Sky account. I've been posting a little bit on there. So find me the same name there, Tim F. Riley. We got Folly Persist for you. Is that right? Did I finally remember your
Absolutely.
Blue Sky name?
At Folly Persist on Blue Sky. And we will put some links to Downpour, to GB Studio, and maybe to one of these game jams in the show notes.
Love that. And thanks for listening, everyone.
And always remember, it's important to finish.